There, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel from the Can-Am Missing Project. And I'm here with executive producer Huck, and we just watched the Skinwalker Ranch episode, and even Huck thought it was fascinating, huh? Shake? Can you shake? That's a good girl. That's a good girl. Yeah. Well, we just watched it, and I can tell you that pretty much speechless in some of the parts, because these guys did some things that people at the ranch have never done before, and we're going to get into it. Yeah, you're a good girl. Sitting here watching, Dave, you better do a good job. So, just a reminder, a couple things. I spent 3 years studying UFOs, UAPs. So I think I'm coming at this from a different type of educated perspective. And I admire what Travis is doing at the ranch. I know some of you said some very disparaging things about what goes on there. And I don't even know why you're watching then. Move on. If you don't like it, move on. But they're bringing in some of the best technology in the world. The first thing they did is they brought in a company called Geolytics, which is extreme ground penetrating radar. And they brought in a guy who developed it named Jan Frank. This is good. And it's good because you can use this technology over ground that's very erratic. Big boulders and things where typical ground technology, you pull on a sled over smooth ground. This was good. And just like almost everything at the ranch that they bring in, they bring it in and right away something starts screwing with it. I think it's funny. You could almost guarantee it's coming. So Jan starts working with this technology, pulls out his phone and goes, whoa, I'm getting some kind of transmission. And he starts going around to the guys and saying, hey, is your cell phone on, and this and that. Says he's never seen it before. Everyone turns their phones off. It's still going. So he says, let's go with it. So this technology can penetrate 200 to 300 feet. That is amazing. Most ground penetrating radar, maybe 10, 15, 20 feet max. But this, I've never heard of anything going that deep. Now, why they wanted to go into that Mesa is that the year before, they did a drilling test and they kept hitting something. Well, the drill should hit it, bounce over the top, and keep going, but it didn't. That's why they said it had some kind of dome to it. And this type of deep penetrating radar is used in mining a lot. Well, there's been rumors of tunnels inside the Mesa, holes in the Mesa. And this technology would find them. But seeing this transmission kind of threw a wrench in things from the beginning, because it appeared as though their test was going to be interrupted at some level. So Thomas Winterton carries this device on his shoulders and he walks up through the Mesa. And that was the first test. And the other one was the technologist Jan went through and carried a deeper penetrating test with more advanced technology. And on the download from Thomas, they had a huge amount of interference. So much so that it was just about unusable. Jan said that maybe 10% of the technology came across in the data. And he showed on screen some strange blobs, but he didn't know what they were. But he said that they were consistent enough that something was happening. Okay, I get that. And that was on Thomas's stretch. And then on the technology that Jan did through his, it was quite different. Quite different. That was on the second survey. And he stated that they showed it on screen, a very large anomaly was definitely under the Mesa. And Jan implored several times, this is a big anomaly. Approximately 20 feet wide and 120 feet tall. It's about 6 meters, 18 feet below. And one of the guys said it's as tall as the Mesa. And then they reminded us that last year when they drilled into the Mesa, they got flecks of metal coming out. And that was important because it related to the shields that are used on the shuttle that goes into space. I heard that, I said, that is bizarre. I mean, that's seriously bizarre. And then Travis made a comment that the metal that was recovered there was almost metal that was made in a furnace. So I think what they got was confirmation that something was in the Mesa. I mean, something was in the mound. And if something was in that mound, the bigger question is, was it placed there before the mound existed? So has it been there hundreds of thousands of years? Or was it placed there post-development of that mound? So did something drill into there and make that its home? I don't know. But then they decided that, okay, we've got to drill into this and figure out what's in there. Start moving boulders and rocks and things. Well, if you've been a big follower of Skinwalker Ranch, over the years, every time that they've gone in there to try to move things around, dirt, rocks, something happens. They brought in a tractor one time to dig in the area of the triangle. It just broke down, failed. And when the ranch was originally purchased by Mr. Bigelow, there were things in the deed that said not to dig. Never explained why, but it said don't dig. So is that some insight that somebody ought to be paying attention to? Somebody ought to be paying or having an understanding about why digging was bad. So they brought in Jake Hoffman, a contractor. They brought in some big cranes, put a culvert in to bypass a small creek that's right there at the bottom of the mound. Water. Now, one thing that I really wish they would do here is something that they did on Oak Island. And they took water samples and they analyzed the water sample for metals in the water. Sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? Now in Oak Island they did it and they found gold in some of these water samples. Well, as just a process of testing and elimination and understanding, taking a water sample out of the locations around the ranch and finding out what are the specific metals that they're finding could be illuminating as to what they're dealing with. Are these manufactured metals? Do they exist in the wild? And are they natural to the area? I think this is important. They haven't done this yet. But they brought in these Photron cameras, very, very high speed, thousands of frames per second. So in the past, they photograph these launches of rockets. And when they photograph them and they go into space, it's almost like punching the bear. And when they punch it, something comes out, a UAP, UFO. The idea is, between the photon cameras, is to track the rocket. And several times in the past, they veered off course and they could never understand why. But it was almost as though the entity didn't want that rocket penetrating space above that zone. It's been very consistent with this. So I ask you, the message is clear. They don't want you going into that zone. Travis and team said, we're going into that zone. Okay. What's the point? The entity may have way more technology than we have. Does the entity have the ability to hurt us, destroy us? They've calmly diverted our technology away. Politely diverted our technology away. So let's keep track of that. So they sent the first rocket up, and it just slightly goes off course. No big deal. Second launch. Right after the launch, they see an orange-colored UFO. Right after the launch. Very bright. They couldn't see it in conventional cameras. When they went to the media room on the ranch, the man inside said, no, can't see anything. My frustration level with the ranch is getting higher. Because when the media room says they don't see it with conventional cameras, what about FLIR? Why don't they have FLIR cameras all over the ranch? It's not that expensive compared to what they're doing. Getting frustrated with them, folks. I'm sorry. So, the first time, rocket goes up, deviates, no big deal. Second time, rocket goes up, deviates. This time, UFO comes out. It's like, let's pretend it's a balloon. You hit the balloon and a little burst of dust comes out. That dust is the UFO. Maybe that's the response. Maybe it's a scout to see what's going on out there. But that bright object goes out and eventually disappears. So now you have the third launch. In my humble opinion, with each launch, the response has gotten greater by the entity. Third launch, they send the rocket up 30 to 50 feet off the ground. They hear a loud pop, and the rocket engine blows up and the rocket comes down to the ground. They recover it. It starts a little fire. And it's obvious that the whole thing blew up. But they have the photon camera that filmed this. And they go back and they look. And at that 30 to 50 feet altitude as the rocket's coming up, you can see that there's something almost like to me it looked like an inverted triangle pointed downward. And this thing, the rocket went up. At the time it reached that point, boom, explosion. Travis described it as a blob-like feature that never moved. So, if the rocket would have just hit a solid object, in my humble opinion, it would not have exploded. But we have technology now in the military to shoot lasers at items that are high heat that can cause things to blow up. So my question is, was this some type of laser that knocked that rocket out of the sky? Or was it even something more advanced that knocked the rocket out of the sky? So, another very interesting angle to this. As this is going on, remember, the response by this entity has got more and more and more. After this third time, when the rocket blows up and they see this entity, the high-speed camera operator says he's never seen anything like this in the sky before. Just as they're high-fiving each other because they're seeing this entity, camera or a helicopter flies over. So a lot of you don't know. I grew up, my dad always had a plane. I was around planes my whole life. I took private pilot's lessons. 99% of the private planes in existence don't have a transponder. These guys made a big deal. Oh, the helicopter didn't have a transponder. Transponders allow the aircraft to show up on radar as your type of plane, call sign, whatever, however you want it transmitted to, that you are something there. If you don't have the transponder, sometimes you're not even seen. Well, that transponder puts a big blimp on jets, radar, etc. Every area of the United States is covered by an FAA control area. A lot of times it's an approach control area to a big airport or something. And they pick you up miles and miles out, and they guide you in, and then as you're getting ready to land, they hand you over to the controllers at the airport. Now, if you have a transponder, they can easily see exactly where you are the whole time coming in. These guys made a huge deal that this helicopter that's flying around didn't have a transponder. I'm sorry. I've been in a lot of helicopters, and I've been in even way more planes. The ones I've been in never had one, never had a transponder. So, I think if you were a helicopter and you were flying in a New York City or Chicago or a very downtown environment, yeah, transponder's super important. You should have one. But that one didn't. They also made a big deal that, oh, that helicopter, they must have had night vision. They must have night vision goggles. Why? Why? I've flown with my dad many times at night. We never had night vision goggles. I know hundreds of other pilots that have private planes. They don't have night vision goggles. So I don't quite understand why they push that button so much, that and transponders. Question. What if the anomaly decided these guys are really perturbing us? They're sending projectiles into us now. And now we have to protect ourselves by blowing things up. What do we have to do to get the message across to these yo-hos to stay away from us? They haven't hurt anybody yet. Some people have gotten radiation burns that have been at the ranch, but nothing in the air has been taken down. Could that be a possibility? And why wouldn't it be a possibility? But let's get back to the helicopter. Right after the rocket blows up, I mean within minutes, this helicopter shows up. Starts flying around the ranch. Now, was that just mere coincidence that it showed up right then and there? Let's take hypothesis number 1. The ranch is a testing area owned by the U.S. government or operated by the U.S. government to test advanced technology and its impact on people, society, the environment. And let's just say that it's been there for decades. And they've sold the ranch over time because they don't want anybody to think that something special is going on there. But unbeknownst to them, Bigelow comes along, buys the ranch, and starts doing all this testing. And then Brandon Fugal comes along, buys it, does even more testing. So our government, we know, has already been there, because we've heard from multiple sources they have. So what if this is some advanced government technology? And when they shot the rocket and we had to use some advanced technology to blow it out of the sky, that triggered this helicopter to come in and disrupt what was happening. I bring this up because Travis knows if you have aircraft in an area, you never shoot a rocket. So was there a fourth rocket in the background and they didn't shoot it because the helicopter was there? And the helicopter operators knew if they were in the area, there would be no more rockets. That's hypothesis number one. And I know it's way out there, but I'm thinking out loud. Hypothesis number two. This is some really advanced technology owned by a terrestrial intelligence that's probably alien to Earth, that's here for unknown reasons, that's been here for eons. And really, this is the first time where somebody is seriously poking the bear. But this is a hypothesis now. Now they really respect humanity. Maybe they're here to study us. But what are they supposed to do if we start to injure them or hurt them? Do they have a right to defend themselves by blowing up the rocket? Makes you wonder, huh? But now that they have this anomaly in the air, and they have an anomaly in the mountain, it'll be interesting to see if they put on hold any more testing into the air at this anomaly after the rocket blew up. And the question is the anomaly in the air and the one in the mountain related? If they are related, how are they related? Does the anomaly in the mountain control what's in the air? Thinking way outside the box. I heard people talk about this and say, in fact, Bruce Maccabee told me this. Bruce Maccabee's a physicist. He said, Dave, I think that there's a giant antenna on that ranch. Well, what if the anomaly in the air is a giant antenna? What if the antenna is to communicate in some way with UAPs all over this hemisphere? And it has a mechanism to protect itself, which it showed at the rocket. Now, Bruce is way smarter than me. And he told me this back when Skinwalker Ranch was first starting. And he said, there's just too much activity around that ranch for there not to be some reason for them to be in that area. And he said for them to all be in that area, it almost has to be some mechanism to attract them. So, if Travis continues to up our technology, in essence, an attack on the entity in the air that they found, what will be the next maneuver? So let's pretend that they take the helicopter and they fly it around that entity. Does the entity have the ability to politely and effectively push the helicopter away and keep it away? Dave, remember in the last couple episodes, they said that they were in the helicopter and they felt like something pushed the helicopter away. Remember that? And then the helicopter also, remember the pilot said that all the GPS systems went down. Well, if this entity is highly intelligent, then they know that that helicopter functions with certain technology that's needed. So they shut down the GPS. They push it away when there was no wind at the time. Helicopters are very sensitive. Very sensitive. And everything has to be functioning correctly. There's so many moving parts to a helicopter compared to a plane that a lot of things can go wrong quickly. Now, I'm not saying that I think that something's going to happen to the helicopter, but I'd probably say I wouldn't be flying in it if I was there. I think that there's more work to be done with drones around this entity in the sky. As I stated before a couple years ago, I think that they ought to dump some kind of dust above the entity in the sky and see if it just layers it. And if it doesn't layer it with something so it's visible, then what kind of technology does it have that you can see it on camera, on high-speed camera, but you can't see it with your eye, and dust wouldn't accumulate on it? I'm going to go back to this one more time. FLIR and IMAX. They are spending millions of dollars on this testing they're doing. Trust me, I know. The people at the ranch, the testing, everything, it's millions over the course of a season. And getting IMAX in there and getting FLIR technology in there is not that expensive on the grand scheme of things. So that would be my push. Push number 3, I get the water tested that's going through the ranch. At different points, I'd also take a sample out of the well, get that tested. I mean, these things, that's really inexpensive testing. I'd probably go to a university lab that specializes in mineralogy that could decipher exactly what's in that water. Key. Now, next week, that big crane is going to come in and start moving boulders away from this entity in the mountain. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for that crane to fail sooner than later. Why? Because every time ground is moved with a machine, the machine fails. Just saying. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. So I would grade this season so far one of the best. And I know the comments that have been made that I've read, you know, this is just made for entertainment, David. So hold your taters for a second. Travis would not be on that site if he was there just for entertainment. I'm sorry. The guy has a history of being brilliant and digging into things that he doesn't understand. Travis, I'm sure, appreciates the money he's making. But that's not the primary reason he's there. And I can tell you for a fact, Brandon Fugal, the guy who owns the ranch, he doesn't need the money. He's a very wealthy real estate developer from Salt Lake. He's not there for the money. He's there for the journey. Same reason I'd be there if I was there. I won't go there, but I'm saying. And lastly, I think it would be important if I was Brandon that I'd be giving these guys medical tests every couple weeks. And I'd be testing their blood and I'd be testing their urine for a multitude of reasons. They've had radiation burns. Thomas Witherton had a huge bump on his head that nobody could account for. I'd want to know if any early cancer started to develop. They're in an area that they know nothing about. They've obviously been injured in the past. And to be extremely cautious, it's just something I'd do. Call me insane, that's fine. But in the back of my mind, I fear for their safety at some level. So that's my analysis of the May 2nd, 2023 Skinwalker Ranch episode. Thanks for being here. And I enjoyed it. You guys have a great week. We'll be back next week if everything's good. Paulides out.